seasoned and young. I want to say thank you for coming out this evening on behalf of the Christian Church in Tennessee to celebrate the many, many years that David was here, doing everything from maintenance to making eggs. And thank you for coming to help pray him forward and to send him forth and to thank God for all that he's been able to do. Not just David, but his entire family. And I want to ask you to give them a round of applause. And we wish him every success as he goes in his new direction.
Yes. Are you pointing at me?
You don't want to use.
Well, yeah, I've worked with David for over 11 years. And he is a unique person. Sometimes he's funny, sometimes he's annoying, but that's David. But he is a good-hearted person that does things for people for the sake of helping people. And after the 2010 flood, he put tools in his truck and drove around till he saw people tearing out drywall and carpet out of their house, and he stopped and helped them for the sake of helping people. He didn't know them. So I appreciate David for all the things that he's been our maintenance man at our office. He's done everything from change the light bulbs to modifying my desk on my computer tray would work, the keyboard. So thank you, David. And I'm sure that he's loved and cared for Bethany Hills for many years, and I know you and the family are going to miss it, and we're going to miss you. Thank you.
If you can get rid of me.
You really ain't gone away yet, have you?
I just wanted to speak on behalf of the regional board, but I also want to speak as an adult camper on many occasions. And as a parent of frequent campers, I'm an 8th grader and 5th grader myself, but David is able to do so much with so little, is able to be generous. Like when he went out into the community in the 2010 flood, he was also doing miraculous work. I was just telling Dale about when that was just all mud from that same flood, this creek flooded, but also improvements. I mean, you look at these gazebos, you look at this new bell placement, all of those kind of things. It's important for me as someone who really has grown up my whole life on these grounds to have somebody that cares for it as much or as more as we do. And you really kind of make it what it is for all of us and have done that for a long, long time, and we really appreciate it.
My name's Joe Keith. I'm a lifelong disciple. Didn't come here when I was a teenager. 1990, I came as a counselor. We did that stained glass. It was kind of neat. I think that was pre. Were you even here yet when we did that? I don't think you were here yet. That was Dale. Okay. I got something to say about you too. I know some of your Boy Scouts. That rec hall. If I had been David and I had been tasked with this place, what he inherited, no offense to Dale, because he had the same situation, a shoestring budget, and that's a gift to say that. But David rebuilt that rec hall. Yeah. He and his dad and my son and others came out here, and I mean, hammers and nails, no contractors came out. Yeah. They tore it all to pieces and rebuilt it into the showpiece that it is now. The cabins would have fallen off the hills by now easily. He's redone those. I've stayed back here before. The bathrooms and stuff in the rooms don't even resemble the nightmares that I was in when I was here. So, you know, they talk about health issues and stuff and cleanliness and whatnot. This place was not built to any kind of a standard other than let's just build a cute little camp in the woods. And it was a mess. I'd have run away screaming when I got here, but David, he's dumber than me. He stayed for 20 years and said, I think I can fix this thing. And he's been working on it ever since. So my hat's off to him. I remember, and Roger Bishop and a bunch of us were here, and Martha, of course. He had a work project when we came up here for a retreat one weekend. Said, I'd like to put a new roof on the director's cabin. So a bunch of people that just came for retreat ripped it all off. Kids up on top of the roof with their dads. You never saw such happy people in your life as people up here tearing things apart and building them back.
Well, a lot of times the building back didn't happen until after the volunteers went home.
But the thing that impresses me is how David would teach people what being an honest to good, basic Christian person was. You never look for kudos. You never look for anything for to slap you on the back or anything. You just always looked at something and said, why not? Why can't we do that? And he's always been that way, and I appreciate you.
I'm trying to figure out how to make the transition because this is what I do. And actually, I woke up on top of that ridge this morning. We camped out last night with the Boy Scouts, so I'm fresh from my sleeping bag in the woods of Bethany Hills because that's what I like. But I found myself going to stores. I was in a thrift store this week, and you could get 50 ping pong balls for $2. And I'm not supposed to be in charge anymore, but where else is Bethany Hills going to get 50 ping pong balls for $2? So something you just can't stop. I would like to point out a couple of things. I'd like to pick on my mom. She's over here in the corner. She's put up with a lot out here. When the tornadoes came through Nashville and the lake flooded at Bethany Hills, my dad was out here working that day. We were building a new dock that week. And she called us and she said, well, Nashville's kind of blown to pieces. You might have to just stay at camp. And my dad put in more than a year of part-time work out here just doing stuff with me, which meant a lot to me. He's been dead now for a couple of years, and I've said it was probably his fault I can't keep up anymore because one of my best assistants is not here. This punch bowl on the table, I don't know what its first job is, but I know one of its early jobs was at my mother's wedding in 1952. So I don't have a long speech planned, so if anybody else wants to turn, they can carry on. So I do have two kids here. Mikkel in the blue shirt and Anna in the pink shirt. So there's another kid who's third year at Vanderbilt. So an awful lot can change in 20 years. When I came out here, I had no wife. The wife is there too. Sorry. This is Monica. This is Betty Midnight, who used to live in my house as a little girl because her father was the camp manager. And there were a couple of short-term interims. Within the 20 years, there was Dale Alexander, and he came here with his wife, daughter-in-law, and grandchild. And then when he left, Andy Brown was sort of thinking about the job, but for whatever reason, he was an interim for just a few months. So we've got all the camp managers represented, starting from about 1967 through 2018. Where's the Katzenbergers? That'd be the previous generation.
Oh.
Next. I like to be really important. I like to save the world. I also like to keep records, and I knew that Dale Alexander had held this job for 20 years. And so several years ago, I said, I might be able to make it 20 years in one day. And I've not done the exact math, but it was close to January the 21st, 20 years ago that I started this job. So I roughly had the same length as the Alexander administration.
I had the privilege of working with David in many different capacities. David was I was a camper with David running the camp, a counselor. Then I became a lifeguard, working in the kitchen. David taught me how to drive a tractor. David taught me how to do a lot of things. I'm not country by any means, but living out here for 5 years during the summers made me feel like, I had some type of country in me. David taught me a lot about life, a lot about hard work, a lot about being a good friend, and just, like you said, what it means to be a good Christian. I appreciate everything that David did for me and David's done for the camp. because I wouldn't be who I am without David and the 5 years that I worked up here and got to spend that time with you. So thank you so much.
We saw a picture of Jason Fretch on the evening news once a few years ago. It wasn't in the 10 most wanted list. This may be a true story, maybe it's kind of close to a true story. But he was working as a coach, and one of his team members had fallen over on the ball field somewhere in Nashville, and Coach Jason had gone over and done some kind of CPR and brought the kid back to life. And Jason said, well, you know, I had to learn that because I was at Bethany Hills as the lifeguard. And I had the same experience, which was in some ways one of the highest points of my camp management and also one of the lowest points of my camp management. I have pulled a non-functioning body off the bottom of that pool and blew air into him, and he came back. And it made me cry for pretty much the rest of the summer, because it was kind of like, well, maybe I shouldn't have let it go that far. Maybe it was my fault. But in any case, he's still alive too. So.
And my story about my dad and your dad was I came to camp, and your dad came up to me and he said, your daddy was here last week and he caught one of the biggest bass I'd ever seen, and he fought that thing up and down the lake. I cut the head off and he had it up in the, like up in the, I don't know what, anyway, he was bragging about it.
Now I know what happened to that big fish.
Now you know why the smell.
I've never been a fisherman. And about 5 years ago, one of my kids came running and said, Papa, we need you, we need you. Went down to the lake, and they were talking to Blue Streak, and I think it was Anna, but one of the kids said we went and got the fishing pole, and we found some bait, we put it on the hook, and we put it out there, and we caught a fish. And if I'd known I was going to catch a fish, I never would have done it. I'm not allowed to talk about my family, but
well, Johnny Baxter worked down here for a while, and he and I met here, and we were together for about 10 years. He helped me raise my kids back in Nashville, South Nashville.
Her daddy taught me how to work. I worked here in 69, 70. Ollie died in 71, right down there on the steps going up to the top of the cafeteria. And I was like 19 years old, working in Nashville at an apartment complex, and David Forsman told me that Ollie died. And there was going to be a CFW retreat or something the next weekend. They called me, so I quit my job and came down here and mowed grass and got cabins together. And she come up from Florida and met me and ruined the next 2 years of my life. But I love this place. I'll come over occasionally and help David do a little bit of stuff. I live just about 12 miles up the road now. But yeah, David's done miracles here with nothing. We need to fund this place.
the house that I'm moving to is 5 minutes that way, and depending on how you look at it, it's either because I couldn't get any farther on the first move, or I wanted to be convenient in case somebody wanted to know where the water guys were. I'm not leaving 100%. You'll still see me.
I just love this place so much, like everybody else does, and we can't see it go. We can't see this kind of go down. No way.
I think we all know that an old infrastructure like this camp needs an awful lot in order to really bring it up to a better standard. And so I wish you guys luck with banging on doors on the church doors and
We realize
appealing to everyone's heartstrings from camp.
I'll tell my hydraulic jack story. I'm John Schuler from Vine Street. David had been at our house in Bellevue doing some renovation work, and David, I'm going to tell my version. You can tell your version later. So I saw this hydraulic jack sitting there in my garage, and I obviously was not using it at the time. So a couple of days later on, I noticed it was missing. And David, in his dry, humor way, said, well, I saw that jack wasn't serving any good there. I borrowed it for a while. And I think for 10 years it jacked up some foundation in one of the structures over there. I was wondering if I would ever see that hydraulic jack again. Did I ever get it back? I think I did.
That story is related to the truth.
And I knew, several of you have spoken a theme of working miracles with nothing. And that's partly how it worked around here. By gosh and my darn, every time I wanted my hydraulic jack, I couldn't get at it because it was holding up some building out here. So I would make other arrangements.
It's my opinion that he's had his jack back for decades now. The center of the front of the rec hall next to one of the doors had gone down about 4 inches, and that was the strongest jack I was aware of. And so part of the current shape of the rec hall is thanks to the jack that he's spreading rumors about.
No rumors, it's the God's truth. So anyway, because of the jack being more purposefully used when I really did need a really heavy-duty hydraulic jack, I've done all kinds of unsafe things, David, because of you. Have you ever tried to use a car jack when you're not supposed to hold up something? Well, I have, thanks to you. But anyway, yes, I did finally get I'll be honest, I finally got the jack back.
About time.
And but here's the funny part, David. I don't know how you're going to think about it. That jack has sat there unused. So that's my hydraulic jack story. Thanks a lot, David.
The door at the rec hall is starting to drag a little bit, so you might
Well, if you know where to come.
you might want to contact the camp manager.
The door's open. It's in the same corner of my garage. Go out and get it.
Now I know what it's like to have a conversation with me.
I would like to relate a story that I consider somewhat of a miracle at camp, and it involves David, but I don't think he's the actual source of the miracle in this one. When he first came to work at camp, Mary and I were here, and Betty, you mentioned something was said earlier about that small house on the hill, small bedroom and such. Yeah, it was still small when we got it. It was fine for 3-year-olds, but by the time they got to junior high age and all, it got even smaller. So we had approached and talked to the region about the possibility, and they agreed to add a master bedroom and a bath and a suite on the front of the house. We were all set to begin construction. And David comes down to the dining hall. This is during summer camps and all. He comes to the dining hall and said, well, I'm afraid construction is going to be delayed. There was a stump in the front yard that had to be removed in order to do foundation work. David had searched diligently, Nashville and every place he could think of, but could not get arranged a stump grinder or a way to remove that stump. Mary said she just couldn't wait any longer.
Just like the camp manager's wife.
And Mary back there. It must be done. David, you'll have your stump grinder today. A little bit, and within an hour or so, I had to go to Dixon. As I was driving through White Bluff, I passed a tractor with a piece of equipment on the back of it, and I said, gee, do you suppose? So I turned around and followed this tractor and piece of equipment down the road till he pulled off, and I said, sir, is that indeed a stump grinder, and do you do work for the public? He said, yes, I do. It's described the situation. He says, well, let me drive down there and see. So he brought the piece of equipment on down to camp, and by noon, the stump was gone and construction could proceed.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
That's the angels at work.
Yeah, exactly.
I was sent out here as a camp counselor from First Christian Church in Knoxville for 1 week, and I didn't feel very strong as a camp counselor, but I had a big, long history in going to scout camp. I never knew that there were girls at church camp. So, and also going to a Baptist church, I wasn't sure I wanted to go to church camp, but it all kind of worked around where I wound up here for that 1 week. And then I came back for 1 week the next summer, and there was one particular other counselor that was female, and I thought she was really cute. Her name was Ruth Ann Martin. And I was going to see some more of her if I could, so I asked Dale if I could join the ground crew. And he said, well, I got to check with the regional office, and we got to check with the insurance people, got to figure out what to pay and all that kind of stuff. But Ruth Ann was cute. And Dale was not here one day that next week, and I moved in one day while Dale was not here. And I've been here off and on ever since. But one time that first summer, somebody had added a little entryway to his house. It tacked another front door out beyond the main front door, kind of enclosed the front porch. They didn't get the roof right, and it had leaked forever. And I said, I'm good, I can solve this problem. So I got up there and I tore all into the roof and got everything cleaned up and straightened out and re-roofed, and everything never leaked again. And it was about 6 months later, the committee met and said, we're gonna add an addition to the front of Dale's house. The first part of adding that addition was to tear off the front porch. And I said, this is, such a shame to tear off this brand new porch. And Mary said, if that's what it took to get him to move forward in that addition, it was worth it. And at the time, I didn't realize I was adding on to my own house, but I've enjoyed your bedroom for the 20 years after you moved out of it.
You and whoever follows, use it in good health.
When we first moved here, that house only had a tub and a shower, and the showers happened down at the pool. And so I would gather up all my stuff and come down the hill and take a shower down there and then climb back up the hill. So, because I just wanted a shower, not a bath. And so Dad put one of those aluminum, just a stand-up aluminum shower down in the bottom below the kitchen there, in the garage area back in there. And for me, and I remember that, and I was just so glad to go down into that nasty basement because I had a shower.
The original clawfoot tub for that bathroom is still in use in that bathroom. It says 1912 on the bottom of it. And when I came here, it had this rickety little shower had been added to the bathtub. So if you have enough shower curtains, you can go all the way around the oval bathtub because it's not really attached to the walls. But I'm not a shower person, so I wasn't married and nobody else cared. So I took the shower head off of that tub and just turned it into a tub with a faucet. And when I did get married and started raising family, they all wanted showers, but that tub didn't have one. So I've been able to lie in that tub for as long as I want because they're all using the other bathroom. And now we've downsized. We bought a house down the road. It has one bathroom with one shower and one toilet. And I'm the guy who goes through Home Depot with a big stack of supplies, like all these floats for toilet tanks, and people look at me funny. I say, well, I have 45 toilets. I kind of need these. So it is kind of a step backwards to go from having 45 toilets to having one, but I've got another one on order because I've discovered they're important. So. A lot of my funny events have been communications with the local utility districts. Martha Bishop is over here. She was the bookkeeper for a long, long time, from when I first came here until 12 years ago or something. But they called Martha up once, the water department, or she called them. She said, I noticed you're not billing us for water. Why aren't you billing us for water? And Martha called me and asked if I knew about it. So I called the water department. I said, we're not getting a water bill. And the lady at the water department, she said, maybe you're on a well. And I said, well, no, we've had water to the camp since 1960, and we just noticed we hadn't been billed for it lately. And there was some confusion. She said she'd get back to us, but they had it down that the water was connected to the regional office on Richland Avenue in Nashville, which is a good 30 miles from the water department. So that caused some confusion, but then finally the lady worked it out. She called me back. She said, well, the guys who read the meter, they couldn't find your meter, so they've just been writing down 0. But unfortunately, the meter was still running, and so they could go back and charge us for that water once they found the meter. We had the same problem again just 2 years ago with the electric company. The electric company came out here and replaced our meter. But the meter in pencil used to be on the side of the meter box. It says multiply all readings by 10. But when they put in the new meter, that little note wasn't there anymore. And the electric company let it run for a year or two. And then they called Joan one day and said, we've accidentally been giving you your electricity for almost free for 2 years. Would you like to pay up now? And Joan said, we'll pay up, but not quite so fast. So are we still paying that electric bill?
Yeah, I told them I'd pay them back the amount of time they didn't bill us. So they didn't bill us for 24 months. I'll take 24 months to pay them back. To pay them what they say we owe you. I figured that was fair.
And I called the electric company once and I said, I've done some maintenance in one of my cabins. I'm ready to make the new overhead electrical connector to the cabin, and I need the power turned off to the camp. And I have this big fiberglass pole with a hook on the top. You can reach up and flip this switch on Highway 70 and do it yourself. But I went up there and the switch was gone. And I called the electric company. I said, what happened to my switch? And he said, well, it was obsolete and they're really expensive. We just took it away and we're not going to put one back. And what are you doing fiddling with the power lines? And I said, well, one of your workers told me how I could do it when I first came here, so I've just been doing it. And I said, and he said, as I told him, I'd hooked up this new panel and needed a new power line to it. And he said, shouldn't you have that inspected? I said, well, you're the electric company. Don't ask me if I'm supposed to have it inspected. They came out here and I pointed up, I said, if you'll turn off the power, I'll climb up and do my thing. And he looks at me with my little handful of pliers, my little aluminum ladder, and drove his big truck down there and did it himself. So if you threaten to do it yourself, sometimes they'll come to your rescue at the last minute.
Since you're talking about electricity and water, tell the story about the grotto.
The grotto?
The new spring that popped up down there past the dining hall.
Oh, okay, the new spring. We had a church coming out for a work week or work few days. I think it involved Dee Wells's church. Is she still here?
She was the captain.
I think she's just
Okay.
pulled out.
Well, but they came over here to work, and there was this little spot over by the old swimming pool where there's water kind of rising up out of the ground and kind of trickles down this little ditch. And I said, we could make this a lot nicer if we've got a lot of stone and built some dams in there, and the water kind of make little ponds and trickle down the dams, and this would be charming. So we spent several days stacking rocks and rearranging things and made it really charming. One guy got a chainsaw and a giant tree and hollowed out some benches to set alongside the water. It was the most beautiful little spot. And everybody took pictures and so proud of what they'd accomplished. And about a week or two after they left, one of my staffers came down the hill far into the ball field and said something about that spring they'd seen on the road up that hillside. I said, there is no spring on that hillside, but that hillside does happen to parallel the main water line to the camp. And so we went and turned off the water and solved that problem with a backhoe and a lot of heavy digging. And after we patched the water line, Joan gets a bill for 1 million gallons of water, and the little trickle place on the other side of the hill that was so charming, the water doesn't run there anymore. So we've got all these little stone dams, but no water.
I learned one of my greatest life lessons from you, and which might be terrifying for some people to hear, but it's really my truth. And even though one of the first things that I knew about you is that I really got your sense of humor. So I don't know what that means about me, but I really appreciate that, even though it's so unique, but I get it and I appreciate it. And I think that has really helped our working relationship for a decade plus in the various roles I've had, and regardless of what's happening. But the moment I knew that it was so much more was one of the weeks of Hope Camp that I was here directing, and we had a camper who was really angry, just full of anger, and was having some issues, and we were just for a loss at the moment, and he threw a rock and it shattered one of these windows right out here. And that isn't something that happens at Bethany Hills. You don't throw rocks and break things. You don't ruin it. It's sacred. And just for the counselors to realize, wait, he hasn't interpreted that. He doesn't understand that yet. We were overwhelmed. We were shocked. We were anxious. We were appalled. And not really knowing what do you now. Glasses everywhere. Campers are freaking out. Counselors freaking out. Director is maybe freaking out. And then, so we sent somebody for you, and you came, and we had kind of went into emergency mode. Everybody moved over to a different location. And what David said to me is, it's just a window. And to realize that it is just a window, and the big scheme of what Bethany Hills is, and the spiritual truths that come from this place, and to realize a broken window is simply a learning experience, and it's a window that would be replaced and just go on with life, because life is so much bigger than those kinds of details. And that's what I know. So in the scope of my day-to-day life or ministry, I know to identify things as it's just a window, and I credit you for that fully. So
we can't neglect to tell that whole story, even though it's not about me. When the window was broken, Hope contacts the parent of the child who broke the window and said, "We can't have this kind of behavior at our camp. It's just not appropriate. Your child has to come home." And the woman she had called said, "That's not my child." And we did some research, and two of the Hope campers, who we don't know so well because they're not members of our churches, they came into the beginning of the week of camp. They looked at the list on the wall of who they're going to have to sleep with, and they didn't like their room assignments. And these two children exchanged identities on the first day of camp without the knowledge of any of the staff. And so the child who was acting kind of crazy and breaking a window with a thrown rock, once we found out who the child was and put them on their medication, they calmed right down.
thank you, David. Thank you. The other life lesson is fingerprint the campers.
I'm not blaming Hope for this. It's too good a part of the story to leave out.
Thank you.
I said, well, we don't have numbers of the cabin. We just happen to know which ones are which. So we directed him to the cabin that his child was in. I said, well, have you talk to the counselor or whatever about picking up your child at this odd time and taking him home? He said, oh yeah, we got that call. That's all taken care of. So the child was loaded up and taken away. Jason wakes up the next morning. One of his campers has disappeared during the night. Absolutely no trace. Suitcase gone, camper gone. Apparently the child had borrowed Jason's cell phone after Jason was asleep and said, I don't like it here anymore. I want to go home. And so Jason wakes up and the entire camper is just vaporized and gone. He was pretty nervous when he got the breakfast. I said, oh yeah, we knew about that. Didn't you know about that?
It is a family effort, and we salute you, and some people here probably salute you more than David. So really, we honor you and respect you and thank you for the years that you all have put into this being a ministry. It's significant, and we recognize it.